But through the storm, it was all so blurry, and my eyes just aren't what they used to be.
Well, try. Is there anything else?
It's funny. I can remember things I did 40 years ago, but... Oh, sometimes I can't even remember what I did last week.
Eugenia, I want to try something, okay? I'm going to say a word, and I want you to tell me if it helps you remember anything, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thunder.
No.
Wind.
No.
All right, how about anything beginning with the letter A, like in apple?
No.
B.
Wait a minute, stop. He wasn't black. That's a B.
Yes, it is.
I'm always hungry, thank you very much.
Grace, anything?
Some smudges, no clear prints.
Shoe size is 12 triple E. The lab rats are still trying to match a brand name.
What do we have, George?
Too much and too little. Beating people up is about as popular as bowling, but I'm not finding anything to connect the victims.
What about beatings that turned into murders?
Better. A couple of hundred throughout the country, not counting domestic violence.
Match them with weather reports. Murders that took place outside during the rain.
Filling in the rain?
It's the one thing the attacks have in common. And it helps explain why no one saw anything. Everyone was inside, like Eugenia Free and Mr. Murphy.
All right, the first one was on the street. The guy at the bus stop, I think he probably went in there to keep dry. And the jogger ran in all kinds of weather.
The repairman and Tortorici had to be out. They were working.
I need help here. You think we're looking for a guy who goes out and beats the crap out of people when it rains? That's nuts.
Well, in extreme cases, the weather can cause disorders that make people nuts.
Like sleep deprivation leads to hallucinations?
Yeah, something like that.
I read this thing once about certain people in Scandinavia. During long cold spells, they snap, literally rip their victims limb from limb, and they call them berserkers.
All right, well, I think our killer snaps the same way. A rainy day turns Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde.
Elvis is still in the building. I need to see it to believe it.
Grace, call the Atlanta Psychiatric Health Center. There's a Dr. Niehoff there. I'd like him to come over. Georgie, rainy days.
It's just like you said in your letters.
It's not much, but it's home.
You said you kept my letters.
They're right here, in this box.
I still can't believe I'm finally getting to meet you. I mean, a lot of people in prison, they get mail, but it never turns into anything.
The problem with most people is that they're afraid of intimacy. But you're not afraid of intimacy, are you? Sharon.
The only thing I'm afraid of is loneliness.
No peeking.
No peeking.
It's all for you.
I'm running too fast.
Never know how much I care.
Slow down.
When you put your arms around me, I get a fever that's so hard to bear. You give me
Get these things off of me. Get these damn things off me! What are you thinking? Are you thinking you're right? Is that it? Well, go ahead. You won't be the first.
Come on, you lousy, stinking psycho!
Talk to me. Son of a bitch.
You lousy, stinking son of a bitch! Bastard!
Spunky, baby. I like spunk. Raw spunk. I'll be able to mold it into talent. That's what I want. You can touch it, taste it, happiness. Be all that you can be.
You're crazy.
Maybe. But you'll never be lonely again. Never.
Captain Smith and Pocahontas had a very mad affair.
There's no question uncontrollable rage can be triggered in a human being by an external impulse, like the weather.
So, Dr. Niehoff, you're telling us that something as simple as rain can push someone over the edge.
I have a patient who loses control whenever the wind reaches a certain velocity, particularly at night, searing him like a piece of meat, and the pain he imagines is intolerable.
At a certain velocity, but not at others.
Well, for the patient, it's like a bonfire. The more fuel, the higher the fire, until it drives him past his threshold and out of control.
How do you treat it?
Medication, years of therapy. The human mind is like outer space. There's a million unfathomable corners.
People who suffer from this, how do they feel about what's happening to them?
At first, they're terrified. They hate what they've become. They often describe violent, bizarre urges, primordial, and they look for ways to vent their anger or avoid it.
Any idea what causes it?
Nobel Prize for that one. All we know is that it's progressive. Once it starts, it feeds on itself, it gets worse, and it can lead to suicide. If you're still interested, I have a therapy session I can show you. In this session, we're trying to evaluate the patient's threshold, hopefully so we can treat it. What you're about to see is worst case, and it's not very pleasant. Why don't you go ahead and fast forward it a few minutes? Now we see that gesture a lot. He's trying to stop the wind. He's near his threshold. Notice he ignores the table and chair. He focuses on the human element. This patient committed suicide.
This guy finds his victims in the rain, hard rain. But the rain is fairly unpredictable.
Okay, so what kind of job would he have where he could take off anytime, day or night?
Something dependent on weather, like gardener or...
House painter, baseball umpire. Or he could be self-employed or unemployed.
It's definitely a loner.
Or he does muscle work. Power grids and construction. They knock off when it rains.
DeMathis?
I'm gonna have George match his whereabouts with victims in Phoenix, Portland, and Osaka. So, when we off for lunch, how about dinner?
About like in my house?
I'll bring the wine.